My name is Andre, and I grew up in a small town where life was calm and measured. One story always sent shivers down the spines of the locals. It was the story of the house on the outskirts of town, which had stood abandoned and decayed for many decades. Since childhood, I had heard tales of the house where, it was said, dreadful things happened. The old-timers claimed that the house was cursed, and that everyone who tried to live there died under mysterious circumstances. I never believed these tales, considering them mere urban legends. Years passed, I finished school and left for the big city to study. I returned only a few years later to visit my parents and friends. One day, over a cup of tea in the company of old friends, we once again talked about that very house. Remembering all the eerie stories, we decided it would be interesting to explore it. The next day we gathered at the house, me, my best friend Pavel, and his sister Olga. The house looked even more sinister than I remembered. Its walls were covered in moss, the windows were broken, and the roof had sagged under the weight of time. We opened the creaky door and went inside. Inside, the house was even more gloomy. Damp and cold walls, dusty floors, and old furniture covered in cobwebs created an atmosphere of abandonment and neglect. We decided to split up to inspect the house faster. I went to the second floor. There were several rooms, in one of which I found an old chest. Opening it, I discovered old letters and a diary belonging to a woman named Maria. The diary was written many years ago and contained entries about strange events happening in the house. Maria described hearing footsteps at night, seeing shadows, and feeling like someone was watching her. Meanwhile, Pavel and Olga explored the basement. They found an old photograph of a family who had lived here before them. The photograph showed parents and 3 children. On the back of the photograph was written, "The house is ours, but we are not the masters." We returned to the living room and shared our findings. We decided to stay in the house overnight to understand what was happening. When it got dark, we lit candles and sat in a circle, trying to summon the spirits of the house. Suddenly, the light began to flicker, and we heard whispers coming from all corners of the room. The whispers grew louder, and suddenly one of the doors opened by itself. We felt an icy cold and saw the silhouette of a woman standing in the doorway. It was Maria. She looked at us with sadness and fear in her eyes. She began to speak, and we learned her story. It turned out that Maria and her family were victims of a curse placed on the house. An evil entity lived in it, feeding on people's fear and suffering. Everyone who tried to live in the house became its victim. We realized that we had to help free Maria and her family from the curse. Following her instructions, we found an ancient spell book in the house's library. The book described how to perform a cleansing ritual. We gathered everything necessary and started the ritual. When the ritual was in full swing, the house began to shake, and we heard a terrible roar. The evil entity was trying to stop us, but we didn't give up. We continued to read the spells until the house was enveloped in a bright flash of light. When the light faded, the house stopped shaking, and the roar subsided. We felt the weight and cold leave the room. Maria thanked us and said that now they could find peace. Her silhouette slowly dissolved into the air, and we understood that it was all over. We left the house at dawn, tired but happy that we could help. The house no longer seemed so gloomy, and it felt as if an invisible darkness had fallen from its walls. We vowed never to return there again, but to tell this story so that people would know that evil can hide even in the most ordinary places.